Revealed, in an incredible moment, a billionaire discovers his employee's life-changing struggle. Jacob Reynolds stepped out of his sleek black car, the hum of the engine fading as he stood on the cracked sidewalk of his old hometown. The town he'd fled 25 years ago now felt both foreign and achingly familiar. Memories of laughter and childhood mischief flooded back, but they were overshadowed by the stark reality of life here. The banners hung limp above Main Street, shops that once thrived were dust-covered shells. Jacob tightened his jaw. This town was alive, but it was hurting. As he strolled down the familiar route to McKinley High, he passed the old factory he once rushed past every day. The workers inside looked weary, their hands calloused and their brows lined with worry. One face stood out to him, Sarah, a single mother with tired eyes that held the weight of the world. He watched her carry boxes, a determined look on her face, but he could see how exhaustion seeped in. Between two jobs and caring for her disabled mother, shades of despair flickered across her features. The nostalgia was bittersweet. Jacob remembered the joy of catching fireflies and the warmth of neighborhood barbecues. Now, he felt a gnawing emptiness within him. Weeks turned into months, and as Jacob began attending community dinners at the local church, he was filled with warmth and kindness, but also a sense of urgency. The conversations around the dinner tables crackled with worry, jobs lost, dreams fading. He could feel their struggle, yet he wondered if he could ever truly understand. Then came the day Sarah's old car sputtered its last breath on the side of the road. Jacob's heart sank. He wanted to help, but he knew his wealth might be considered a taint. Anonymously, he tried to resolve her problem, contacting a local mechanic. But when Sarah refused help, pride cloaking her in a defensive shroud, it hit Jacob like a punch to the gut. "I don't need charity," she insisted, her voice trembling with the ghosts of her past. Determined to bridge the gap, Jacob decided to rally community support for a fundraiser to help her. His heart raced with ideas while he envisioned hope restored. But as Jacob organized the event, murmurings echoed through the factory. He sensed resentment. The employees exchanged glances laden with skepticism, questioning whether this billionaire could penetrate their world of sacrifices and broken dreams. He wasn't one of them. Could he grasp the true essence of their struggle? In a heated community meeting before the fundraiser, Jacob unveiled his identity. Gasps echoed across the room as shock morphed to indignation. Accusations boiled over, words like privileged outsider and daunting distance pierced the air. The weight of their anger pressed down on him. Their voices were like thunder, and in those moments, Jacob felt himself shrinking. He knew he had to face the chaos. The factory workers demanded sincerity, a deeper engagement beyond money. Jacob felt the raw intensity of their emotions: disappointment, anger, hope. Was wealth really a barrier? He began to see that it wasn't enough to throw money at problems, respect had to be earned. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension was palpable. Jacob's mind raced. One thing was clear, he needed to start anew, not just for Sarah, but for himself and the community he had left behind. Authentic connection, devoid of arrogance and wealth, was the bridge he had to build. In the eyes of the workers, he saw a yearning not just for assistance, but for solidarity. How would he prove that he was here to stay, to listen, and to learn? The path forward loomed uncertain, yet an undeniable flicker of determination ignited within him. Jacob paced back and forth outside the factory gates, every heartbeat echoing the unresolved feelings swirling inside him. The workers were still in there, their voices raised in passionate debate, while he felt like a ghost, neither entirely welcome nor completely alien. He could almost hear their words. They were sketching out their dreams, their disappointments, and deep within, a sense of betrayal lingered. After years of toil, they were left standing in the shadows of a man who had all the opportunities the world could offer. This internal struggle intensified when Sarah stepped out of the factory. Her expression was one of constraint, teetering between frustration and raw vulnerability. Jacob noticed her hands were raw, a testament to her hard work. He'd experienced struggles in boardrooms and business deals, but nothing like this. "Sarah, wait," he called, suddenly feeling that this conversation was long overdue. Walking toward her, he noticed her flinch away, as if bracing for an impending storm. "I know you think I can't relate to what you're going through," he began, his voice steady despite the tumult within. "I've been privileged, but I want to change that. I want to be part of something real." She narrowed her eyes, skepticism tapering her features. "And what do you really know about being part of anything? You disappeared the moment you got your riches." It stung, but he reflected on her words. She was right. Money had put a wall between him and his roots, shielding him from the reality of hardship. But he wasn't done. "I want to change that. I want to be part of this community, not just in a week or two, but from now on. I want to help without the strings attached that wealth often carries." Her gaze shifted, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "What are you willing to do?" Sarah challenged, crossing her arms against the chilling evening air. "I see you in your fancy cars and suits, but I'm struggling just to get by. What makes you think anything you do will help?" Jacob took a deep breath, the weight of his silence speaking volumes before he found words. "I can't just offer money. I can volunteer, share my skills, and help create new opportunities. Maybe just maybe I can bring people together to create something the town hasn't seen in years." She hesitated, her demeanor softening only slightly, yet something sparked in her expression. Was it hope? "Talk is easy," she said cautiously, "you'll have to earn that trust." "I know," he replied, nodding as he felt their shared struggle flowing between them. "I'll show you. Just give me a chance." As they talked, a few workers with skeptical expressions gathered around them. Now they were listening. Jacob felt the lump in his throat as he tried to explain his vision. Their faces reflected a mix of interest and doubt, and he knew that if he hoped to change the narrative, he needed genuine action to accompany his words. "I want to work alongside you," Jacob declared. "Not as the billionaire, but as someone who learns from you, who collaborates with you." He gestured toward the factory behind them. "I want to be involved, hands-on, participating in this life you lead every day. Sign me up for a shift. Let me know how I can be of help." The idea lingered in the evening air like an unlit torch waiting for a spark. Slowly, he saw Sarah's defenses start to lower. Perhaps he was getting through. The workers exchanged glances, and Jacob felt that small flicker of hope lifting his heart. Minutes felt like hours as the silence stretched between them. Jacob found himself holding that breath, waiting for the decision that might change everything. What if they still turned away? What if he was too late to make a difference? Then Sarah spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, you want to help? Prove it." Those simple words held the weight of a promise. Jacob smiled, elated as warmth spread through him. This was just the beginning. But even as excitement coursed through him, he felt the nagging question: was he truly ready for the journey that lay ahead? As he followed Sarah toward the factory, determination grew stronger with each step. But deep down, he couldn't shake the nagging thought: would the community see him as a true ally, or just a wealthy man playing make-believe? As Jacob stepped into the factory, the air was thick with the scent of metal and machinery, every hum and whir reminding him of the lives entwined within these walls. The large assembly line loomed before him like a relentless river, workers expertly navigating its currents, their concentrated expressions revealing both determination and exhaustion. He took a moment to absorb it all, his heart pounding a little faster as he approached a group gathered around a large machine. Welcome to the grind. A tall man with tattooed arms called out, his voice rich with sarcasm but underlined by a glimmer of curiosity. Jacob could feel the weight of their stares, some intrigued, others outright skeptical. "Hey, I'm Jacob," he introduced himself, putting his hand out in a gesture of camaraderie. "I'm here to lend a hand." A woman with tangled hair and smudges of grease on her cheeks stepped forward. "Lend a hand? What do you know about working here?" she asked, crossing her arms defiantly. Her question hung in the air. He wanted to answer but hesitated. "I know less than I should," he admitted simply. "But I want to learn." This caught a few of the workers off guard. Jacob saw the flickers of interest as some exchanged glances. Pushing past the nervous lump in his throat, he continued, "I want to understand your daily challenges, to share the burden. If there's a way I can actually help, I'm willing to do it right here, right now." Sarah watched from the side, her expression softening as she caught Jacob's earnest gaze. The tension in the room shifted, but just as quickly as it lifted, fear flooded back into their eyes. "Nothing changes for us down here," grunted an older gentleman, his voice grating like rusted metal. "They pay us the same miserable wage no matter what." "I get that," Jacob said, determined not to back down. "But do you believe you deserve better?" The question fell heavy, and they stood in silence for a moment. The older man's expression flickered, revealing a blend of hope and resignation. "Dreams don't pay bills, kid," he finally replied, shaking his head. "You can drop in all you want, but this is just how it is." "If everyone thinks like that, nothing will ever change," Jacob responded, his annoyance bubbling beneath the surface. "But if we work together, we could find ways to make a difference." Sarah stepped closer, her gaze fixed on him. "And what exactly do you propose?" "Keeping it real, you know how many times we've heard talk. Where's the action?" He took a deep breath, recalling his vision. "We start small. Organize workshops to improve skills, open dialogue with management about wages, create a community where we all support each other. Let us build that trust." The air turned electric with possibility. One worker scoffed but others nodded slightly, intrigued. Jacob could feel Sarah's cautious optimism growing beside him, and it spurred him on. "I'm here to work," he asserted, "to be one of you. Let us do something together. I don't want to be the wealthy outsider, I want to belong. This is step one." Then, without thinking, he rolled up his sleeves and approached the nearest machine. He glided his hand across the controls, letting the sensations wash over him, revealing just how daunting this task could be. Laughter broke out among the workers, but it was laced with warmth. They were amused, but Jacob saw the way their defenses crumbled just a bit more. This was where they worked, where they earned their living, and he could finally feel the weight of that shared reality. Before long, the supervisor appeared, arms crossed, wearing an expression that said he was not impressed by Jacob's presence. The tension snapped back into place, and Jacob steeled himself for the scrutiny that was soon to follow. "What's this?" the supervisor demanded, eyeing Jacob with disdain. "Another rich guy playing laborer? Let me remind you that nothing here gets televised. If you're just here to play, you can turn right back around." Jacob swallowed hard, aware that his next words could either cement his commitment or leave him shattered in their eyes. "I'm not here to play. I'm here to work, to prove I'm serious about helping this community. Please, give me a chance." As that challenge hung in the air, Jacob understood that his journey was only just beginning. The path ahead would be riddled with doubt and challenges, and the factory's heart beat as ferociously as his own. Would he rise to the occasion when it truly mattered? As the supervisor stared him down, he knew one thing: he had to show them he was more than just a shadow on the sidelines. Would their skepticism turn into acceptance, or would this be the moment he lost everything before he'd even truly begun? Jacob stood tall, tension crackling between him and the supervisor like static electricity. The factory was loud, a symphony of machinery and murmured conversations. But all he could focus on was the skeptical glare aimed his way. The other workers watched, silent witnesses caught between curiosity and doubt. "Prove it," the supervisor finally grunted. "Jump onto that line and show me you can keep up. Do the work. You think it's easy? Let us see how you handle it." The challenge hung heavily in the air, and Jacob's heart raced. He nodded. This was his chance to walk the talk. Without waiting for the supervisor's response, he stepped forward, heart pounding in rhythm with the mechanical beats around him. The workers shifted, their eyes narrowing as they watched him step onto the assembly line, a world unfamiliar yet calling to him. He could hear the grinding gears, feel the vibration beneath his feet. It was chaotic yet organized, a powerful engine of teamwork. He could taste the sweat and determination, the shared misery of labor that bound these individuals together. "Right!" shouted one of the workers, his voice layering excitement over the noise. "Grab that part right there and attach it quickly." Jacob nodded, focusing on the task. He fumbled a bit, adrenaline pushing him faster than his actual skills allowed. The heavy metal part was cold against his skin, and he struggled to tighten bolts against the rhythmic flow of conveyor belts and voices. Every movement felt foreign, and he could sense the workers watching. Would they judge him for his mistakes? He took a breath, shaking off his initial unease. Pushing through the stumbles, he worked hard to match the pace, to blend into this rhythm. Surrounded by these tirelessly dedicated workers, he felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Would this act truly earn their respect, or would it deepen the divide between them? With sweat now pooling on his forehead, Jacob pushed harder, moving with determination. Something changed in the room as he locked eyes with Sarah. She offered a small tentative smile, a hint of approval. He felt the shift, a moment of connection amid the chaos. The supervisor leaned in closer, inspecting him with narrowed eyes. "You're doing okay, but you can't just throw yourself into it and expect a trophy. To make real change, you need more than just effort." "That's exactly why I'm here," Jacob asserted, his voice steady. "I want to learn. I want to support you all, really." As if struck by his words, murmurs rippled through the small gathering of workers. Jacob could see the flickering flames of interest growing, eyes brightening. There was something deeper buried beneath their rough exteriors. They wanted hope. As he continued working, he overheard bits of conversation. "He might be different," one worker whispered. "What if he really means it?" Another murmured, filled with cautious optimism. Each word felt like a building block in constructing trust. Then the supervisor abruptly interrupted the moment. "Enough. You're making these folks late. If you're serious, you better be ready for tomorrow. No days off. Let us see if you can keep up." Jacob's heart sank momentarily at the sheer weight of what was demanded. But then, a fire ignited within him. "I will," he stated fiercely, the words spilling forth before doubt could snuff them out. Real change wouldn't come easy, but he was ready to face the grind. As he finished the shift, fatigue settled in his muscles, but there was a flicker of hope igniting at the core of his being. Jacob understood now, if he was to earn their trust, he needed to sweat alongside them, to share their burdens truly. Walking out of the factory, the sun began to set, casting long shadows on the pavement. Tomorrow would be another chance, another opportunity to change not just the narrative, but lives. But as he stepped into the cool evening air, one question loomed larger than any other. Would the workers be willing to meet him halfway, or was he still just another outsider in their eyes? The next morning came too quickly for Jacob. He woke up, each limb heavy from the late shift, but his mind buzzed with anticipation. Today was his chance to dive deeper, to prove he meant every word he said. He slipped into his clothes, the crisp fabric a reminder of the identity he left behind. He was no longer merely the man of privilege. He was a part of something bigger now. The factory loomed ahead, each window reflecting the rising sun, casting little shards of light that glimmered like possibilities. As he stepped through the entrance, the familiar factory sounds enveloped him, the cacophony of machines, the clanging of metal, the hum of voices, each slice of noise a reminder of where he stood. He caught sight of Sarah first, already at her station, her brows furrowed in concentration. She looked at him with her wary smile, as if weighing what yesterday's effort meant. Jacob returned her gaze, a silent promise passing between them. Today was not just about keeping pace. Today he would engage. "Ready for round two?" she asked, her tone light but edged with sincerity. "For the long haul," he replied, feeling a weight settle on his shoulders. His determination was solid. The supervisor was waiting, arms crossed, an ever-watchful guardian over the assembly line. "You've got a reputation to build," he warned, eyeing Jacob. "Keep it steady." Nervous laughter rippled through a few workers nearby, but Jacob didn't shy away this time. He stepped onto the line with a renewed purpose, his movements no longer stilted but alive with intent. As the hours wore on, he fell into a rhythm, his hands growing stronger and more confident. It wasn't long before he lost himself in the work, the flow of machinery melding with the pulse of the team around him. And then he heard a voice raised above the din. One of the workers, Tim, was in the middle of a heated argument with the supervisor. Jacob tried to catch bits of the conversation, but all he heard was frustration laced with desperation. "It's not fair. We need those breaks, or we can't keep up. We're human, not machines." Tim's shout sliced through the noise, echoing every unspoken concern hanging in the air. Jacob glanced around, noticing the shared anxiety on his co-workers' faces. They were trapped, caught between the demands of productivity and their need for dignity. He felt something shift inside him, a flicker of rebellion. How could he stand idly by? "Tim!" Jacob called out, surprising himself. "You're right. I don't know the struggles you face daily, but I'm learning. Let us find a way to talk to the supervisor together." The factory fell silent for an instant, all eyeing him with disbelief. Then, murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the group. They saw him right there with them now, not above but alongside. Sarah nodded slowly, her expression shifting from skepticism to cautious hope. The supervisor's eyes flared at Jacob's interruption. "This isn't a democracy, kid," he barked. "You're overstepping." Jacob stood tall, heart racing. "But it needs to be. People can't function under pressure like this. We're all here to earn a living, not to break." The tension rose like steam, thickening the air. The workers waited, breath bated, caught between anticipation and fear. Jacob exchanged glances with Sarah, who looked both frightened and thrilled, suddenly buoyed by the possibility of change. Was he brave enough to pursue this further after all? What would the supervisor's answer be, and could they really begin to shift the weight of such an enormous machine? And as the moment expanded, Jacob sensed an energy stirring, something deeper than just rebellion, a communal hope taking root. But would they harness it, or would it flounder like so many dreams before? Jacob's heart raced as the supervisor's glare bore down on him. In that moment, the factory was no longer just a place of work, it had transformed into a battlefield, and Jacob was standing at the forefront of change. He could feel the eyes of his co-workers on him, a mix of hope and disbelief swirling in the air. He had ignited a spark, but would it catch fire or fizzle out? Enough of this. The supervisor's voice cracked through the electric tension. "You think this is a game? You can't just demand respect without earning your place here. Get back to work, all of you." But Jacob stood firm, determined not to back down. "We're not machines," he insisted, a fierce conviction building in his voice. "We deserve to be heard." Murmurs rippled through the workers again, some nodding in agreement while others looked nervously between Jacob and the supervisor. Sarah moved closer to him, her stance showing support, silently urging him forward. That small connection fueled Jacob, and he pressed on. Listen, he continued, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. What Tim said, it matters. We can't pretend everything is fine when it's clearly not. We need breaks, we need respect, and we need a voice in the way this place runs. The supervisor's expression twisted, perhaps between anger and confusion. This place has always run like this. You should know your place, Jacob. You're new here, and you don't understand the stakes. I may be new, but I'm learning, Jacob replied, emotions swirling like a storm inside him. And I see the stakes. You think it's just about numbers and quotas, but we're people. We're your workforce. You can't just drive us until we break. Tim shifted closer, emboldened by Jacob's bravery. We want to work hard, but we want to do it without feeling like we're prisoners here. It's not just about the job, it's about our dignity. The supervisor fumed, but Jacob caught a glimpse of hesitation in his eyes. You really think a meeting will change anything? You think I can wave a magic wand and fix the schedule? What if we all talked? Sarah's voice echoed softly, but it brought a wave of solidarity from the other workers. Not just us. But everyone. If management saw how it impacts us, maybe they'd listen. With that, Jacob locked eyes with every worker around him. That's it. What if we could collectively express our concerns? If we talk as one, we can't be dismissed so easily. Are you all on board? Jacob asked, hope spilling from his heart. One by one, heads nodded. Together. Tim echoed. But then, like a dark cloud breaking over their newfound resolve, the supervisor snorted, crossing his arms tightly. You think you're all united fine. But remember, I hold the cards here, and you cross me, and it won't just be your breaks on the line. Think long and hard before you decide to fight this battle. Jacob felt the wind in his sails tremble, but he raised his chin, allowing the warmth of solidarity to bolster his resolve. We can't let fear control us anymore. If we don't speak up now, nothing will ever change. The atmosphere crackled with tension, but beneath that, an invisible thread of hope hinted at the possibility of a breakthrough. Would they really move forward and challenge the system, or would fear silence them once again? As the supervisor turned away, Jacob's heart raced, and he wondered about the real implications of what lay ahead. What if this was at the moment that either sparked a fire for change or extinguished their dreams entirely? With that uncertainty looming, he met Sarah's gaze again, and in that one look, he saw shared determination. What would come next, this collective journey into the unknown, would define them all. Would they truly be able to confront the enormity of the factory's machinery and demand their place? And as Jacob's heartbeat quickened, he couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to unfold. The factory buzzed with an energy Jacob had never felt before. Workers gathered in small clusters, whispering, exchanging cautious glances and nods. The air felt different, charged with possibility. There was a sense of unity among them, something that had been absent in the monotonous drone of machines and the oppressive weight of their supervisor's presence. Jacob took a deep breath and raised his voice again, louder this time. Let us meet after work. We can talk, really talk, away from this place. Let us build a plan. A wave of determination washed over him as he saw more workers nodding, their anxiety melting away into spirited resolve. Right. Tim exclaimed. We can set up a group chat, share our thoughts, maybe even create a list of what we want. If we're organized, we'll have more power. Exactly. Sarah added, her eyes shining with hope. And we can take turns speaking when we do meet with management. Everyone has a voice this time. Jacob could feel the fire growing deep inside him. It was no longer just his fight, it was for everyone who felt voiceless. They were ready to transcend fear, ready to resist. As the day wore on, the countdown to the end of the shift felt agonizing. Time seemed to stretch as they worked, each moment a reminder of their battling spirits against the factory's suffocating norms. The machinery clattered and clanged, but the noise faded into the background. Instead, Jacob's mind buzzed with thoughts: how could they convey their struggles? Would management truly listen? At last, the whistle blew, signaling the end of the shift. Jacob gathered the group outside, adrenaline coursing through him as he looked around at their faces shining with a mix of uncertainty and courage. "Where do we start?" Jacob asked, feeling the weight of their collective hope. "Let us share our stories," Tim suggested, shifting his weight nervously. "What do each of us feel about the working conditions? Our experiences can highlight our needs." They formed a circle under the glow of the streetlight, and one by one, the stories poured out. Sarah spoke first, her voice shaking at first, but then gaining strength as she shared how long hours without breaks made her feel drained, as if she was barely surviving the day-to-day grind. Then it was Tim's turn, recounting tales of injuries that went unreported, the way management brushed aside concerns over safety for the sake of production. Jacob could see the raw emotion on their faces: sadness, pain, but also renewed strength in acknowledging their reality together. The stories flowed, an empowerment workshop forged by shared struggles. Each word hung in the air, binding them closer. The weight of isolation lifted, replaced by a camaraderie they had all craved but never knew how to find. Feeling the swell of collective energy, Jacob finally spoke up. "We have to put this all on paper, a petition or something. We can present it during the meeting with management. All of our voices, all of our stories as one." A cheer erupted from the group, the fear diminishing under the warmth of hope. But just when the mood felt celebratory, a shadow fell across them. The supervisor loomed nearby, watching with a narrowed gaze. "What's this?" he barked, arms crossed defiantly. "Plotting something, are we?" In that moment, the air turned thick with tension again, the earlier excitement replaced with uncertainty. Jacob's heart dropped as they were all thrust back into the harsh reality of their vulnerability. "Everyone, stay calm," he whispered quickly, rallying the group with his eyes. "We know our strength." But the supervisor's presence loomed larger than life. What would they do next? Would this be the turning point that led to either their liberation or their downfall? Jacob felt the pressure, and yet the fire within flickered brighter. He had taken the first step, but the road ahead just got a lot more complicated. Would they dig in their heels, or would fear send them retreating back, silencing their newfound strength? Jacob's pulse quickened as he locked eyes with the supervisor, a man whose very presence seemed designed to instill fear. No one spoke. The tension hung heavy around them, a thick fog that threatened to choke out the courage they had just built. Jacob's heart raced, and he could feel the urgency in the glances exchanged among the group, a mix of defiance and trepidation shimmering in their eyes. "Is there a problem here?" The supervisor sneered, his voice ice-cold, laced with authority. Jacob clenched his fists, the anger bubbling within him. This was what they were up against: the oppressive nature of a system that thrived on silence and fear. Yet here they stood, ready to face it, united. "We were just talking about making things better for all of us," Tim finally spoke, his voice shaking slightly but resolute. "We want to share our experiences so that management can understand our concerns." The supervisor's brows furrowed, but there was no sign of backing down. "You don't think I'm not aware of your whining?" he spat. "Do you want to make this a bigger issue? You think I want to report you for insubordination?" Jacob felt a surge of protectiveness over his friends. They weren't whining, they were standing for their rights, and he wouldn't let fear overtake them on this path they'd just begun. "No, we're not trying to cause trouble," he said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "But we have every right to discuss our working conditions. It's time for a change." The supervisor stepped closer, attempting to intimidate. "You really think your little meeting out here is going to do anything? You're nothing without this job." Jacob's jaw tightened. The supervisor was right about one thing: this job meant survival for them all. With a glance at the group, each person wearing a face of mixed fear and defiance, Jacob realized that if they were to take this step, it had to come from somewhere deeper than just job security. It had to come from a belief in themselves and in what they could achieve together. "Maybe we are nothing without this job," Jacob said sharply, breathing out his frustration. "But together, with our voices raised, we can demand to be heard. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to everyone who has ever felt small under this roof." A flicker of surprise crossed the supervisor's face, but his composure quickly returned. "You've got guts, kid. But it won't last. I'll make sure of that." With a final glare, he turned, stomping back toward the factory, leaving behind a charged silence. "Did you see that?" Tim burst out, the relief giving way to exhilaration. "We stood our ground. This is why we need to keep going." Now, with their supervisor gone, the atmosphere shifted. Excitement cracked through the circle like a spark igniting a fuse. "We need to act fast," Jacob urged. "Let us meet again tomorrow. The longer we wait, the harder it will be." Eyes lit up with determination as they all nodded. Tomorrow was crucial. They couldn't afford to let the momentum die. This was their chance to change everything. As they began to disperse, Jacob felt a warmth spreading within him, a feeling of purpose he hadn't known in years. Hope was tangible now, but as he looked back at the closed doors of the factory, a strange knot twisted in his stomach. What would happen when they took their united front to management? Would they face dismissal or worse? They were charging into a storm, and while he felt electric with possibility, fear lurked just beneath the surface. "Stay strong," he whispered to himself as he walked away. "We can't turn back." But inside, the question lingered: would courage be enough to overcome the walls built by fear? And would they be ready for the fallout of their rebellion? The next morning dawned gray and misty, a heavy blanket overshadowing the promise of sunlight. Jacob awoke early, his mind racing, replaying the events of the previous day. He could still hear the supervisor's menacing tone echoing in his ears. Anxiety clawed at him, but he forced it down. Today was inevitable, today was crucial. He arrived at the factory early enough to feel the cold air on his skin, mixing dread with a flicker of hope. As he walked in, the hum of machinery accompanied the rhythmic beat of his heart. Workers trickled in, some with tired eyes, others sharing hushed conversations about their plans. Jacob approached them, his own excitement tempered with the same trepidation he saw in their faces. "Together we can do this," he reminded them with a smile, though he wasn't sure how convincing he sounded. Their nods reassured him, even if a few looked unconvinced. Tim and a couple of others gathered around Jacob, discussing how they'd present their concerns. "Maybe we need to gather stories from everyone," Tim suggested. "We can't just bring complaints, we need real experiences, something they can't ignore." "Exactly," Jacob replied, excitement building. "We'll paint a picture. They need to see us, hear us. They can't just brush us aside anymore." As they brainstormed, Jacob felt the power of their collective commitment. Discussions spiraled between hopes for shorter hours, fair pay, better working conditions. It was a whirlwind of pent-up frustrations finally finding an outlet. But above it all, Jacob felt that sharp pang of worry: what if it all fell apart? Before they knew it, it was time. The air turned electric as they stood at the entrance of the management offices, a small crowd gathering behind them. The weight of the moment pressed in, but as Jacob glanced back at his friends, their apprehensive faces began to solidify into expressions of determination. The moment had come. They knocked on the door, the sound resounding like a gunshot through the stillness. When it swung open, revealing the manager's scowling face, Jacob steadied himself. "Good morning," he began, surprise mingling with stiff protocol in the manager's expression. "We'd like to talk about our working conditions." The manager's attention was quick, scanning over the gathered group. Jacob could almost see the gears turning in his head. These were not just workers, they were voices that couldn't be dismissed easily. What makes you think I have time for this? The manager shot back brusquely. Because we're not going away, Jacob countered, his own heart now racing in rhythm with the tension. He stepped forward, feeling the support of his friends behind him like a wind at his back. This isn't just about one day or one complaint. This is about changes that could help all of us. The manager's brow furrowed slightly, but Jacob picked up on a flicker of interest, a crack in the wall. As they launched into their stories, Jacob poured everything into his words. He shared about the late hours, the struggles to support families, the laughter that faded behind worry, the dreams that slipped away because they were too exhausted. With every story from his co-workers, the energy shifted, the tension in the room morphing into something thicker. But just as Jacob felt they were making progress, the door behind the manager opened. A familiar figure stepped in, the esteemed billionaire who owned the factory. Shock rippled through the assembled employees, their mouths agape. Jacob's breath hitched. This was unexpected, and he felt a mix of fear and hope. What's going on here? The billionaire asked, fixing Jacob with a steady gaze. It was a moment that could change everything or could end in despair. Would they find an ally in unexpected circumstances, or would this be a crossroads on their difficult journey? Jacob's heart raced, caught in a whirlwind of emotions, waiting for a response that could either tear them apart or knit them closer together. Jacob stood in front of the billionaire, his stomach twisting like a knot, his heart racing. The atmosphere felt electric, a charged moment that could swing either way. He could see uncertainty in his co-workers' faces, a blend of fear and hope that mirrored his own. What is going on here? The billionaire repeated, his voice steady but carrying a weight that filled the room. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he scanned the group. These weren't just workers, they were people with stories, and he was finally seeing who they truly were. Taking a deep breath, Jacob stepped forward again, drawing courage from the spirit of those standing around him. We're here to talk about working conditions, about our lives, he started, his voice shaking only slightly. Things need to change. We want to be heard, not just as numbers, but as individuals who matter. There was silence for a moment, the billionaire's gaze focused intently on Jacob, as if gauging the sincerity in his words. Jacob felt a wave of urgency wash over him. The time for change had come, and he could feel the collective heartbeat of the workers behind him, unified and strong. I've seen how hard everyone works, the billionaire replied finally, a hint of something softer in his tone. But business is tough. I have to make decisions based on numbers, quotas that can't come at the cost of our humanity, Tim interjected, his voice rising with passion. We understand the pressures you face, but so do we. We're not asking for handouts, we're asking for respect and fair conditions that allow us to support our families without sacrificing our well-being. Jacob nodded, encouraged by Tim's boldness. We need breaks, better wages, and to feel valued for our contributions. We're all part of this community, and we want to work together to find solutions, not just problems. In that moment, Jacob locked eyes with the billionaire, a connection forming in the midst of tension. He could sense a shift, an opening that had not been there before. The billionaire glanced at the workers assembled. He could see their weary faces filled with determination. This was no longer just a meeting, it was a movement. I believe in giving voices to those who have been silenced, the billionaire finally said, his tone softer, almost reflective. I want to understand. Let us sit down together, have a meeting to discuss your concerns. No filters, no barriers. A ripple of relief washed over the crew. Jacob felt a weight lift from his shoulders, perhaps they were finally being listened to. Thank you, he replied, sincerity flooding his voice. We want to build something we can all be proud of. The billionaire's expression softened, almost like a man realizing the life he could choose. Let us schedule that meeting. And I want to hear every single one of your stories. You deserve that. As they moved toward the door, Jacob felt an exhilarating mixture of hope and uncertainty. The journey to change wouldn't come without challenges, but they had crossed a threshold. They had transformed fear into possibility. Once outside, the group erupted into murmurs of disbelief and excitement, hands clapping, shoulders embracing. The sense of community had emerged like a phoenix from the ashes, visible and alive. "I can't believe that just happened," Sarah exclaimed, her eyes shining with joy. "He actually listened. We did this together." Jacob beamed, looking around at the faces glowing with pride and triumph. This is the start of real change. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light over them, Jacob felt the collective strength of his co-workers, each face a testament to the power of togetherness. They had rallied their courage and, against every odd, had been seen. But deep down, Jacob understood this was just the beginning. The fight for respect and dignity didn't end here. It was a problem rooted deep in the system, and it would take continuous effort to achieve lasting change. He felt a fire reignite within him, fueled by the unwavering connectivity they had discovered. As the celebrations began, he took a moment to pause and reflect. Their journey would require dedication, resolve, and unity. But now, they were not only fighting for their own futures, they were building a community. And as he glanced at the horizon, a wide grin blossomed on his face. A journey that had begun in brokenness was transforming into something beautiful. There was still much work ahead, but together, they could face it all. Now, it's time for you to be part of this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that will inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for stories that matter. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. We want to hear your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation, because true change happens together. You need to subscribe now, don't wait not even one more second to share, and be part of something powerful.